Hey everybody, how you doing tonight? It's Mike, your old buddy here from IncrediCon and IncrediChat, the Hudson Valley's family-friendly comic and pop culture fest. My light's a little soft in here tonight. I don't know why that is, but it is what it is. Just a quick reminder to everybody, and we'll talk again at the end of the show. We have our live event, outdoor IncrediCon this week happening in Wappingers Falls. So come on down. It's free admission. We have some vendors, some artists. So come out and support local business. So we're gonna get on with our show, and tonight we have a wonderful artist, storyteller, and expert of all things the Monkees, our buddy from Arizona. Please welcome to tonight's show, Russ Kazmierczak. Did I say it right? I got it? Yes. All right.
Nailed it.
So welcome. Look, we already have what the heck? Hey, Joe Ryan. Hey, we already got viewers tonight. This is great. So welcome to IncrediChat. It's great to have you here tonight.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it. Coast to coast tonight.
What's that? Coast to
We're
coast.
coast to coast tonight.
I know.
There's
and we're
close as I get to the coast.
We're the entertaining guys tonight. There's other guys going on tonight, but who wants to watch that when you can talk about comics, right?
Right. I mean, that's scripted. You know, everybody knows how that's going to go. This can go off the rails immediately, and I have 3 flies in this room tonight. So, when it comes to debates, I'm already 2 flies ahead.
Well, I'm going to ask you. So you said a fly. Is there a Baxter Stockman somewhere back there? Probably, right?
There sure is. I got a Baxter down there next to my Technodrome.
There you go. There you go. I knew it. I knew it. So Russ, welcome. As I said, so Arizona. I just need to know. I'm here in New York, and a lot of our viewers are obviously mostly from the New York area, and hopefully we're getting some folks from Arizona tonight in the West Coast. Tell us what is the comic scene like out there in Arizona?
Well, first of all, I'll claim my New England cred by telling you I was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Okay. So we moved here when I was 8. So I did get 8 hard years under my belt in Stratford, Connecticut. So shout out to all my Mazzaric Avenue. Shout out there. But the comic scene in Arizona is flourishing. We have several great comic book stores, many self-publishers like myself, and some folks that are, icons in the biz, in the industry, live here as well. Of course, a lot of folks probably know Todd McFarlane lives here in the Valley. Steve Rude lives here in the Valley. Dave Beatty is up north from us here in Phoenix. So there are some pretty incredible folks that have contributed to the comics industry for a long time that call Phoenix their home. So we're right up there with Portland and Philadelphia, I'd say, is a formulative comic book community.
Yeah. And you did mention about some of the shops, and just a little backstory for the people who are watching tonight. Like, I got to meet Russ a couple of years ago. Our buddy Alex Simmons, I went out with him to do Ace Comic Con. Which what's the name of that arena that they have out there? It was like that big, like, globish, weird. Oh yeah,
it's where the Cardinals play.
Yeah, amazing arena. But I came out there with Alex Simmons to do Alex's Kids Comic Con, and so another mutual friend of ours, the Janimel, he was part of that, and so Janimel introduced me, and I don't know if you got to meet Alex or not, but I got to meat Russ. What's the other guy's name? Birdie. I met Birdie,
absolutely.
Yes. So
Birdie Burdishaw.
Yeah, and I met him, and just such great people. And like my first night out in Arizona, and just talking about this friendly comic scene out there. Like, we went out to dinner. It was like it was a German place. We got like bratwurst. I think it was a German place.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in downtown Glendale, right? Yeah.
And it was like January. I left New York and it was snowing, and I come down in January and we're eating outside, which was crazy in Arizona. But it was awesome. And then we went over, you were saying, and talk a little bit about this, because I certainly want to give him a plug. Drawn to Comics, like, what an amazing store down there.
Absolutely. Owned by Ken and Susan Brown, the Brown family. I went to Drawn to Comics for the first time in 2005, very shortly after they opened in downtown Glendale. I lived in California at the time, and I was visiting family for the holidays. And I just looked up, comic book stores in the area. See if any that I had gone to since I was a kid were still open or what. And I went there, picked up a few books, had a friendly chat with Ken, That was on Thanksgiving weekend, 2005.
Okay.
Thanksgiving weekend, 2006. Obviously, I'm back in town. I go back to Drawn to Comics. It's been 364 days since I walked into this shop. I walk in, Ken says, "Hey, Russ, how have you been?" And I was like, "What?" And that epitomizes the hospitality and the customer service you're going to get at that shop. It's definitely a family feel because it's run by one. But then they create one with their customers. You won't meet a guy that loves comics more than Ken, and I couldn't recommend their shop highly enough. It was also fifth on travelandleisure.com's best shops to visit while touring the country, while touring America. Drawn to Comics was number 5 on that list, and they earn it. Other great shops here in the Valley, though, too. Ash Avenue Comics in Tempe, close to ASU campus. They carry a great independent small press selection of books. So if we're shouting out local shops, I definitely want to include them as one of my favorites, too.
Absolutely. No, please shout out everybody. And I know you're mentioning, and if I remember correctly, God, when we came to Ace Comic-Con, was Stan Lee there as well, I think?
He was on stage with Todd. I think that might have been one of his last public appearances. And
there was a ceremony that Ken, I guess, was a part of, right? Where Stan Lee got like a key to the city or something, correct?
That's right. And I got to tag along and photograph it. I had breakfast with Ken that morning. We recorded a podcast together. And he said, "Hey, if you got the day free, we're going to this press conference where the mayor is going to proclaim it Stan Lee Day or something in Glendale. And since we're the local comic book shop, we're going to help the mayor give Stan a key to the city. I need somebody to take pictures. Russ, would you mind?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm free." So, so I called my mom. I said, "Reschedule your doctor's appointment. I can't take you to the doctor today." No, that didn't happen. But yeah, we went, and I was kind of, meeting Stan Lee adjacent because Ken was there meeting Stan Lee, and it was awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Stan Lee is a legend without a doubt. So that's great. So yeah, no, so tell us a little bit. So you've Connecticut, Arizona, California. You've been everywhere, right? So you now settled down in Arizona. Tell us a little bit about your work as a cartoonist, and certainly I want to hear more about the Storyteller stuff, what you do there. Oh,
thanks. Yeah, I moved to California when I was, I graduated high school and moved to California to go to college. And I met a good buddy there named Brent Otey, O-T-E-Y, and he was wearing a Batman shirt on campus, and I was wearing a Batman shirt, something like that. So we started talking. Yeah, I mean, this is 1999, so you met people in person, and
not now.
Yeah, right. And when we were chatting, I shared with him a fan fiction idea, basically, that I had for a Batman Elseworlds story. Gotcha. Remember Elseworlds? Yeah. And so when we had dinner a couple nights later, he said, "Hey, I drew something," and he pulls out pages from the story. Like, he said, "I thought it would be cool to draw some of that story for you." And I was like, "What?" So I said, "Look, if you're going to invest time in stories that I'm coming up with, let's make them original. Let's come up with some characters, and let's do something." So a collaboration began, and we self-published comics. So my first foray into comics was just writing them, maybe a little character design, a little thumbnail, page layout. But Brent was the real visual talent with those books. So in 2009, I moved back here to Phoenix, and I wanted to continue self-publishing, but without the constant collaboration with somebody I consider to be a really talented cartoonist. I decided, well, I'm just going to have to draw it myself. And I kind of picked up where I left off as a late teen that drew regularly. I would always draw and sketch in my 20s, but I had this desire to keep self-publishing, so I just started drawing comics about superheroes in Arizona, since this is where I was, and all the other cities were taken. Phoenix doesn't have any really notable mainstream superheroes, so I came up with my own roster, and I've been doing it ever since for 10 years now. So
go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, somewhere in the mix of self-publishing comics, I started reading at poetry open mics and doing a very small amount of stand-up comedy and whatnot. And that was all captured by a local journalist. And I was dubbed, you mentioned storytelling, so I was dubbed the best storyteller in Phoenix in 2018. And I think I can brag about that until about 2023, until it starts to sound sad, you know. So,
Mom, you have the title.
Yeah, 2018.
Well, now you know. So tell us a little bit, and for folks who are watching, if you see on the bottom scroll there, you see there's the link to AmazingArizonaComics.com. Tell us a little bit more about Amazing Arizona Comics. Like you said, you created this because Arizona, like, yeah, you don't think of like superheroes from Arizona. So tell us a little bit more about those guys.
Yeah, when I lived in California, I loved it. I loved living in Orange County near Hollywood, and I felt like this is the center of the universe. Everything that's important happens right here, you know. So when I moved back to Phoenix, I had that longing of, gosh, you know, Phoenix, you know, this is the desert. And I think a lot of artists go through a phase where they kind of self-depreciate themselves here in the valley. We call it the valley, actually, but
yeah,
you know, it's the desert, and it could seem depressingly sepia or wrongly monochromatic or whatever. So I was watching the news one night, and our very controversial Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio was on the news talking about SB 1070, which was the state bill that would be the equivalent of, there's a colloquial phrase for it, where you could like pull anybody over at will and demand proof of their citizenship. That was a big deal in 2010. And it still is, but we had a state bill for it and everything. And the way that Joe Arpaio was on CNN talking to the country, and it said, you know, Maricopa County, despite the fact that I might not have agreed with everything he was saying, I felt this weird sense of like hometown pride. I'm like, yeah, he's talking to Wolf Blitzer from right here in Phoenix, you know? And it occurred to me that if Commissioner Gordon were real, if he was a real police commissioner, he would probably be a talking head at some point on one of these news networks, because, you know, Gotham's, you know, crime riddled. He's got vigilantes that run around. So like he would be a voice in law enforcement across the country. So that just got my imagination reeling. Like, okay, if Arpaio's kind of as close as we'll ever get to Commissioner Gordon, if not philosophically, then at least like practically, if superheroes existed, how would he enlist them? And, you know, what if like a lot of young folks here in Arizona, they didn't care for what he stood for. So he's enlisting superheroes that are young and energetic, then they rebel against him. And it just kind of created this whole concept, this whole universe under our reality, where a lot of news stories started making more sense when I thought, well, maybe there are secret superheroes that work for Joe Arpaio, you know, work for the sheriff's department. So that's kind of where the first issue takes off, is this concept that some of the news that we see here in Arizona and that might affect the country actually has this undercurrent of superhero activity. And it definitely makes things more interesting to look at the world that way. So.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, I've never really thought about that, but that whole idea about Commissioner Gordon, like, yeah, he really would be like he wouldn't be really doing his police commissioner job. He would be talking about all this. And if you're looking at the DC universe, he would be doing commentary on these things.
Sure. You see it a little bit in Dark Knight Returns, you know, but that's in the context of his retirement. So I think that he'd spend a lot of time with the press, more than we see.
Yeah. That's really an interesting concept. And like one of the other things too that I found fascinating, and I'm sure other comic shops around the country do this too, but talk a little bit about what you guys do. You do like a 24-hour comic. Like,
oh yeah.
In the window of Drawn to Comics. Talk to me about that too. That's great.
Yeah, the 24-hour comics challenge was created by Scott McCloud in the early 90s. You know, he's the guy that wrote Understanding Comics, one of those seminal texts for comic book creatives. And he decided with a friend, I think it was a dare that went wrong because they ended up having to do it or something. They said, well, let's sit down and we're going to create a 24-page comic in 24 consecutive hours. And they've done it, and many, many artists have done it since. Definitely not something that I came up with. There's a rich legacy to this, but I think it was the summer of 2015 I wanted to give it a shot because going into summertime after Phoenix Comic Con, it's hot. You know, you might have heard that Phoenix is hot, and not a lot of stuff happening. So I thought it would be cool to do something like that in the summertime when there's generally nothing else going on, and making it something of a spectacle, like a bit of performance art in a window. Because it's really, you know, I could sit here in my office at my drawing board for 24 straight hours, but if I put myself in a window and made it kind of this exhibition, it's like the closest I'll ever get to feeling like David Blaine or something. But, you know, I get to eat and I don't dedicate it to my daughter or whatever. But so I thought there's that element to it. I will definitely produce a comic within the day, so it'll be worthwhile in that regard too. And something for folks to come look at in the summer, you know, when nothing else is really going on. So I did it that first year at a furniture shop in Midtown Phoenix. And then the next year I asked Ken, and we've been doing it every year since, with the exception of this year so far, but where he's got this big, beautiful storefront window. Yeah. And it's really just like the perfect amount of space to set up a 6-foot table and draw. And it does look like, you know, the man in the glass box kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that like it is entertaining. Like, you know, one of my favorite things about going to Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con here, even when I was out with you guys, you walk around Artist Alley, and you're actually like there's so many amazing artists, but to actually sit there and watch them bring these characters to life, like, and I mentioned a friend of mine, two friends of mine, Dan Perrin and Fernando Ruiz from Archie Comics in you know, and I've always been a big Archie fan. You know, and just to watch either one of them, you know, sit there and draw Jughead or Sabrina, however, and like if I was sitting there, it takes some time, and just how gracefully and it's done, and it's like, wow, you know, it is like you mentioned David Blaine, it is like magic because you're bringing these things to life that people recognize, people know, and people want to watch it. And well, and it's still relatively new for that kind, you know, for artists to have that kind of exposure. Yeah. Making comics, drawing, it's a very private, intimate thing, you know, where it's just you at a drawing board or at a tablet. So because I'm such a fan of like performance artists and, you know, just guys playing guitars on the street, like how can that translate into my skill set, which is drawing, you know, relatively private art. And I thought that's the closest I can get to being a street performer as a cartoonist. So yeah. No, and you know, also if you were down in Florida when they had it, it's like the animation studio that they used to have too at Disney. Like you'd walk through. Oh yeah, absolutely. Work, yeah. But no, like, but it really is, like you said, a performance art. And when you're an artist, a lot of people don't really think about those guys like yourself who are sitting behind that desk in the room. And it's cool. And some people have been commenting on both of our feeds about like your collection behind you. But it's cool. People don't get to see what goes on, you know, behind the scenes of a comic book, you know, or in their collections. And I mean, that's great. It's so funny. Like I'm just looking here at these things, at the other thing feed going on. But yeah, most artists have like such a collection like that. I have a collection like that downstairs. You know, we were watching the Toy Story documentary, and you know, for Toy Story 4, my son and I, and the guys on there have like all their Legos and stuff set up in there, which is like just crazy, you know. It's inspiration, big kids. But yeah, so you were saying storytelling, the comic thing. Another passion that I know we talked about when you were there, when I was there with you, and I posted tonight. I know some people were asking about that. The Monkees. You love the Monkees. I do love the Monkees. Yeah. That's love is the word. Sure. Yeah. and you've met all four, correct? I did meet all four at different times between 2008 and 2012 or so. I had the chance to meet each of them individually at different shows. Gotcha. And when you mentioned like a performance art too, like there really is like like they were musical, but they were also comedy, you know. And oh yeah. And in my fandom, all roads lead to He-Man and or the Monkees, because each of them are kind of their own holy trinity of things. Like He-Man was an action figure line turned mini comic book series that came with the toys. turned cartoon. So by consuming He-Man, I'm a fan of toys, cartoons, and comics right out of the gate. Like, that's just a given. And then with the Monkees, just like you said, it's music, it's comedy, and it's film. So the idea that, you know, a young person can develop an appreciation for all of that stuff through one franchise, to me, is, well, when I was a kid, it felt revolutionary. Even in the 80s, the Monkees felt like there's nothing like this, and there maybe never will be. But
no, absolutely. You know, it's funny that you mentioned, because I was going to ask you, where did you find some of your inspiration from? And so you just said it right there, and that's why I called the Monkees. But then you said Masters of the Universe, and like, let's talk about like Masters of the Universe, because you said it was the toy line. They were comic, and I mean, there's new iterations of the comic book, and I mean, we can throw in the Dolph Lundgren film and all that stuff, and then of course there's the classic Filmation series, and then like the different iterations that came after that. Which masters do you gravitate more to? Where do you find more inspiration from?
Ooh, that's a good question. From I haven't thought about it that deeply, but from a storytelling perspective, actually, the Mike Young cartoon series that came out in the 2000X series, fans call it.
Network, right?
Yeah, that did a really good job of trying to catch a lot of the concepts that the initial Mattel's Masters of the Universe and Filmation's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. That did a good job of trying to catch all this kind of random stuff that was just a part of the corporate machine of putting out these toys and taking my parents' money. They did a good job of making that a solidified mythology. So as much as I love the early toys and all those mini comics, that series has a special place in my heart. But you know, those mini comics were the first comics I ever read, and you're talking about Bruce Timm drew some of those comics. Yeah, the little I got those around here somewhere. But Bruce Timm drew those. Stan Sakai did lettering, you know, and he went on to create Usagi Yojimbo. Larry Houston did work on those books, so they weren't throwaways. Those are some really cool little comics. You know,
that's why they're worth so much now, because a lot of kids did throw them away. They got that toy, right? So, but no, but it's interesting, and I mean, could go into another question here too. Like, you know, looking at Masters of the Universe, right? There were so many iterations of it. And I mean, even right out of the gate, there were so many iterations of it. Like, I remember, I forget who put the book out, but there was this incredible, like, this comic book that came out. I think it was like from Golden, like, not Little Golden Books, but like Golden Press or whatever. Sure. And I remember getting it from the library, and I remember hiding it from my parents. Be like, oh, I kind of lost it. We of course found it and brought it back to the library. I didn't want to bring it back, but it was a different He-Man than who I saw on TV, you know, because it was different, you know. But I mean, when I played He-Man, I definitely played the goofy Orko and, you know, bumbling Skeletor. I think everybody did. But with like inspiration like that, and you mentioned Batman, the Batman story that you came up with your friend in college earlier.
Oh yeah.
If you had the opportunity to work on a property, a dream property, what property would it be, and how would you approach that?
I have quite a few dream properties, I guess, and some really odd ones too, like the A-Team. I'd love to work on the A-Team as a comic book series, because from the 80s Los Angeles underground, you can incorporate other franchises that were around at that time. Like, I would love an A-Team meets Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon crossover, because it's all LA. It's all 1988 LA. And I'd love to have Murtaugh, you know, hell-bent on bringing these guys in, but Riggs, with the military connection, sympathizing with them, you know. So I've always had that fanfic brewing in my head. But
that's great.
Full-on franchise, Greatest American Hero. That would be a dream project too.
Then how would you make any changes to the storyline? Because I think that's a great property. Absolutely,
it really is, and I think Disney owns it now. Maybe, and there was talk of an Adam Sandler, vehicle revival a couple years ago.
I don't know.
Whatever. But the idea of a teacher, a pretty liberally minded teacher, getting a super suit, and the conservative cop that has his vision of what that hero should be, and the constant dilemmas in this political climate would be crazy. Plus, something that wasn't really explored until the very end of The Greatest American Hero was the celebrity that would come with it. Like, he did a pretty good job of staying secret. But at the very end, and this is where the spinoff of The Greatest American Heroine would have happened, when Ralph is discovered, he basks in the glow of the fame. And the aliens come back and say, this is supposed to be a humble job. You can't be out there with the paparazzi and whatnot. So they take the suit from him and then they give it to a young lady, and that was the pilot for The Greatest American Heroine. But I'd like to really explore, okay, you're a humble teacher on a teacher's salary. You're given the gift of Superman without an instruction book. And how do you battle the concept that people have of things that you should do versus the stuff you really want to do? And can you do what you really want to do? So you would have a lot of that kind of pseudo socio-political commentary, and it would be fun. You'd have a lot of fun with a guy learning new superpowers as he goes. That's one of the great things. And
you mentioned that too, because I'm a teacher myself. I work in education, and I definitely can relate to Ralph. I worked in the New York City schools, and as you're sitting here talking about that, the social, economical, political aspect of it, there's that scene in the opening credits, I think a kid throws a chair at him or something, and he kind of turns around and stuff. But even because, for lack of a better term, his kids were the sweat hogs,
right?
But I mean, again, in our society today, working with such a diverse group of kids, you really could probably hit a lot of different elements. That's
absolutely. And another angle to that pitch, if I wanted to go off book from the canon of The Greatest American Hero, would be that every season somebody new gets the suit. So you see the suit used in different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and how they would deal with those powers. And maybe some powers are revealed when a new wearer has the suit and so on. I thought that would be a fun way to. That would be like the Netflix take, where maybe different leads every season,
like a mythology kind of storyline.
Yeah. I don't know if that's exactly what Altered Carbon is doing, because I've only watched the first few episodes of that. But it seems like the leads might change in that when.
Yeah, or even American Horror Story too. It's a different.
Oh yeah. Wow. So the aliens are the through line, and maybe every now and then a previous wearer of the suit sees something in the news that gives him or her oh my God, that's my suit. And so now you have that person pursuing the suit, and you could do that kind of stuff too. So either one of those, and maybe both. Maybe you spend a really long time with one protagonist, and then come issue 100, bold new direction.
Yeah. Or, I was going to say, or the A-Team meets The Greatest American Hero too, right? Why not?
You know what? That's all. Stephen Cannell created both franchises. So
what happens if? Well, I mean, there's a big difference between Murdoch or Face getting that suit too, right?
Absolutely.
But I mean, really, when you think about that, personality-wise, what directions those two storylines would be if either one of those guys got it, because completely different ways it would be handled.
Oh yeah. Face would definitely love the celebrity and the fame, and I think Murdoch would enjoy really just flying more than anything else. But
being silly, right?
Being silly, yeah.
And you mentioned the Stephen J. Cannell universe, you never really think about that. My God, there you go, Russ. That's the multiverse, multiverse, whatever, the film universe to get started, right? Wow.
Oh, yeah. Let me share this weird fun fact with you. Marvel put out a 3-issue A-Team comic book series in the early 80s. And at the end of one of the issues, somebody alludes to, I'm forgetting the character's name right now, but Culp's character in The Greatest American Hero, the cop.
Oh, did they?
They allude to, they say his name at the end of that A-Team issue.
Oh
and
God.
I thought, they're building a Cannelverse, like in early 80s Marvel Comics. If they could get the Greatest American Hero license, then you could have these crazy crossovers. It's all LA, it's all 80s. But
well, you know,
Bill Maxwell, they mentioned, that's his name. They mentioned FBI agent Bill Maxwell in an A-Team comic. So it was a thrill.
Now you made me have to go and look at Jake Canal to see what else he did. Because listen, I don't think there are certain things in his universe. I don't think anybody wants to see more Sunny Spoon. You know.
That's true.
15 episodes. I remember Sunny Spoon on NBC. And I think Riptide too, wasn't that Canal?
Oh yeah, maybe Airwolf, Renegade. So
Hunter, all these
Hunter,
Stingray, Wise Guy, just like going through the commission. I like the commission. Michael Chiklis is awesome. Let me tell you. Well, no, I mean that's hilarious. Just going back to toys for inspiration. Good old Ray Felix, a good friend of ours here. He said he had He-Man for a while, G.I. Joe, Bionic 6, and the Dinosaur Transformers. Great toys. Bionic 6, there's another great toy that, like, where's the revival for that? Like,
probably some red tape, you know.
Yeah, and even like Mask, like, you know. And so tell us a little bit about, like, I mean, you probably have a little bit of, you probably have some Mask or whoever. What do you got behind you there? Because I know people see this.
A lot of my He-Man collection up here. These are.
I'm giving you the full screen.
Say what?
I'm giving you the full screen so you can.
Whoa, full screen! All right, yeah. A lot of the vintage He-Man up there are from my childhood. I just kept them. My parents never had that yard sale or whatever where everything was sold. We kept everything, and somehow this stuff specifically made the move from Connecticut to Arizona. So either my parents were really supportive of my passions or really cheap and they didn't want to buy new toys. I don't know which one, but
is that Superpowers on the second shelf? Is that Mr. Miracle I'm seeing and from Flashes?
Yeah, this stuff is the DC Comics classics that came out in the early 2000s. Some Maddie collector stuff in there. And further down, I have my Ninja Turtle section. And over here I have kind of miscellaneous, a little bit of Thundercats, a couple of Karate Kid figures in there.
Very popular now.
Absolutely. I actually just got a Johnny online. I still had the Karate Kid himself, but I had to get a Johnny because now I don't know who the good guy is. So I had to have them both.
You know, we were just having that conversation today at my job. It's like, who is the good guy of Cobra Kai at this point? Right. Because they really tied up. What I just got to ask you, up in the corner behind you in your He-Man thing, there's who's like, it looks like it's a big orange beard. Is that one of like the trolls from He-Man up on top there?
You're probably talking about Gwildor.
No, is that Gwildor like up right on? I'm pointing like you can actually see where I'm pointing to. I'm pointing on my screen. You're looking right at it, up on the top there.
Oh.
Up. Okay, over to your right. You're over your right. No. Next to Buzz Off. Buzz Off's at the top. Is that Buzz Off at the top there?
Oh yeah, below that vehicle is
No, if you move over to your right a little bit, right? Or is it your left?
Oh, I don't know if I could see. I have a faker up there, so maybe you're seeing his orange.
No. Is up, keep going up. I know, everybody, this is riveting television, folks.
I was gonna say.
To the other side. Okay. Other way?
Let me go over here real quick. Are you talking about this guy right here?
No, next. Go to your close up.
Oh, nope. I can't see.
I'm just curious who that guy is. It looks like some kind of troll or Viking. You're right.
This guy right here?
No, next to him.
Right here.
And then towards the back.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can see that. But
looks like he has a big red beard.
Big red beard, huh?
I can't tell. I'm just
gotta be this guy, no? You're talking about?
No, it's a big guy in the back.
Oh,
maybe,
there are vehicles back there too.
oh, it's a vehicle. Okay, maybe that's
that's one of the disc shooting vehicles.
Because I thought it was because for Masters of the Universe they had those like troll characters out there for like, or there was like, I don't want to say a troll, but there was like some kind of like bigger characters. I remember.
Oh yeah,
that's what it was, and those were like hard to come by.
Oh yeah, no, I don't have anything super rare up there, to be honest with you. And for some reason, my Scare Glow when I was a kid is like one of the few figures that got lost. Gotcha. You know, my Ninjor, his gi or whatever he wore, that got lost. You know, so like the rare stuff somehow is what disappeared. But yeah, that's one of the vehicles, and I mean, I don't have any of those giant characters, unfortunately.
No, that is great. That I mean, you like you said, to keep that stuff. I still have all my stuff from when I was a kid, and my 7-year-old looks at me and he's like, "Daddy, how do you still have this?" I was like, "Because I took care of my stuff." Honestly, exactly. Today, don't take care of their stuff.
Absolutely, I tell my girlfriend's boys all the time. You know, you guys have a lot of toys, or you had a lot of toys. Like if everything that you've had, you accumulate, you have a collection at that point. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's a good lesson for kids.
Absolutely. And listen,
that's how we can justify it, Mike.
Exactly. So let me ask you, and again, the situation is probably a lot different down in Arizona than up here in New York, although I think some cases have spiked. But regardless of that, we were all nationwide, we were on quarantine. Did you have any projects and things that you were working on during the quarantine? Like, how did you pass the time creatively with that? That's what we've been asking a lot of folks.
Well, I had hoped to reach issue 50 in my mini comic series this year, because in December of last year, I finished issue 40. So I thought if I was semi-monthly in 2020, I can get to 50 by December. Didn't happen. I got 4 issues done, which is still pretty respectable. You know, that's like quarterly, so that's not bad. And I'm going to start issue 45 here pretty soon. I actually just did a test print of 44 today, so this is the flip cover of issue 44. But where June Monsoon fights the beer bugs, get it, the coronavirus, and then Speed Cameron fights the villainous Karen right here. So, and I didn't put it on the cover, but Karen is a yet to be determined acronym, so it's K period A period R period E period. So yeah, I just kind of kept my head down working on the comics, and I got some digital copies up at tribedirect.store, which is linked to my website. So, you know, I made a concerted effort to digitize some of my print books, and I was able to kind of still sell and interact with fans that way. But I just figured, you know, I'm going to keep drawing so that when we get back to an artist's alley somewhere, I have new books to show, and that, you know, so they're relevant, since I do try to kind of rip from the headlines from time to time. To not have anything COVID related post pandemic would seem short-sighted. So
yeah, and you know it's funny that you mention it, and we've talked about this with a bunch of folks that have been on here. And again, you're into the pop culture. Like, how do you think? I mean, the social stuff has always been a very important part of pop culture and comics. Like, everybody's always addressed it. So, I mean, and that will continue. But in regards to the whole COVID thing, how do you see that affecting the way comic books and media, you know, how is that going to be incorporated? Like, I mean, I joked with this with Dan and Fernando a few weeks ago, like are Archie and Jughead going to be wearing masks and going to Riverdale socially distant, you know?
Right.
But I mean, like, do you know, as somebody who's into pop culture, do you see in these comic worlds, like really tackling that, or just keeping it separate from it?
I'm going to guess that for the immediate future, they keep it separate, especially since DC just announced that future state. And unless Batman and Flash are wearing those face coverings because of COVID, I didn't see any semblance of that. But, you know, I don't think it will happen immediately, but I think it will happen over time, because this is a pretty this year certainly has its own characteristics that I think will resonate with the younger generation. You know, I don't want to say this is their 9/11 or anything like that. But you know, there is this kind of macabre combination of death and fear versus politics and social commentary.
Yeah.
And for superheroes to not address that in any way would be a shortcoming to their strengths and why they've been so long lasting. So I don't know. I mean, I've incorporated it into my comic in very silly ways. There's no real commentary here, other than, you know, you're a superhero and you see a damsel in distress or a dude in distress as well. You see somebody in distress, and you swoop in to defend off the creeps in the alley or whatever, and then you turn and extend a hand to their victim to help them up, and that victim says, "Whoa, get back, 6 feet, 6 feet! You know, wait a minute, I just came here I just swooped down from the rooftop." But so I think like that's kind of my take on it so far, is in the same way like police and legit emergency responders have had to deal with all this stuff.
Yeah.
Superheroes will too. Fortunately, a lot of them already wear masks, already wear gloves. They don't want to get too close to you in the first place, you know. So a guy like Batman wouldn't be like, you know, all the more reason for him to get out before the cops or the media shows up. You know, the less people he comes in contact with, the better for staying an urban myth. So, you know, if he said that in his inner monologue in any given Batman issue, like, hey, you know what, for better or worse, this kind of helps me reset my urban myth, I think that'd be a nice, respectable way to address its integration into society and how we think about it without being so heavy-handed that we got to, you know, look at a mortality rate or something.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you know, and it's funny too. Again, going back to Batman, but because Batman, I don't want to say Batman's an everyman because he's certainly not. But he's the mortal guy, really. You know, he's not immortal. He's not superpowered. Like, I mean, it'd be even interesting to see like a character like that. You know, he even gets sick. You know, like how would he deal with that? Like, how would Gotham City, you know, or wherever, you know, one of their heroes gets it? I mean, I don't think they'd go crazy, be like, oh well, what would the side effects to Spider-Man's powers be, or to a mutant if they got it? But certainly, you know, like if one of these like normal guys who are out there got it,
right? Well, and I think Gotham dealt with a plague in Contagion or something like that before No Man's Land in the 90s. I think there was an airborne virus, you know, that came from Ra's al Ghul kind of story. I did tell a story in my last issue where one of my superheroes, Sombrero, puts on an alien sombrero and becomes a superhero.
Yeah.
So one of his friends tests positive and gets pretty sick, and so he won't rest until he finds the supervillain responsible for this virus. And you know, he shakes down all the major players, the mad scientists, the witches, the wizards. He's like, all right, who did it? And they're like, this is natural, dude. Like, it's not a supervillain plot. And then he goes to his fellow superheroes and says, all right, you know, we need to troll the dark web. We need to, you know, get to our satellite base. We got to do all this stuff. And they're like, no, this is just the human condition. And, you know, all of your superpowers aren't going to fight this. And I would suppose that's like the Superman take on it. He'd want to fix things right away because he assumes it could. But I think that, you know, Batman would feel pretty similarly. He's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of influence. And, you know, Wayne Tech would be trying to whip up a vaccine. And it would have to do less with the cape and more with his other resources.
Yeah, I mean, and even like Lex might want to try and get. Here we go, political wise, right? There you go.
Absolutely. Yeah, why buy the Wayne Enterprises vaccine when the Luthor Corp vaccine's a couple bucks less over here at Stevie Lex? They got Walgreens, and then they got Wayne Greens and Stevie Lex as drugstore in the DCU, I guess.
Yeah, right. That's very funny. So another question. So you independently publish, obviously, and you've been doing this for a while. What advice could you give to folks who are interested in getting into doing that? You know.
Sure. I have a lot of practical advice for something like that. Young artists, especially, that are intimidated by how they draw or what they draw. I always say that when you start, quantity over quality is king. And then as you become more comfortable, you could focus on the quality. But it's, you know, a lot like an aerobic workout where those first 20 minutes are key. that's how it is with drawing. You know, those first few pages and getting into the momentum and the practice of getting your story out there is key. Finding the time and utilizing that time effectively and practicing those skills is very important, you know. So time management's huge for me, you know, because artists, you know, we talk about the day job, and then we have family and relationships, and then somewhere in the midst of that day, we squeeze in this dream we have of being a comic book artist or being a writer, whatever your art or passion is. And to prioritize that time as much as anything else, to me is an investment, not just in who you are, but in that work, so that you really believe in it when you have the rare opportunity, well, not rare opportunity, but when you have the opportunity to put it out in front of somebody. Not so rare nowadays, actually, because of social media and all that. So, you know, there's also this knee-jerk reaction to everything I draw. I got to share. Like if I draw a circle, you know, hashtag making comics, and I put that on my Instagram. And hashtag process, because I, you know, drew a circle. To me,
that's what people did.
Yeah. You know, I think that you know, kind of keeping it precious helps too. You know, if you show all your cards, then you know, somebody's gonna know how to call your bluff in the future. I don't know if that analogy even works, but the idea is,
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, you know, you really focus on a product, on a story, on a complete issue or thing, and then put it out there, sometimes despite yourself, and then do it again, do it again, do it again. You know, my most rewarding issue was probably issue 4, because I felt like I really wanted to get a first issue out. And then I was so jazzed by that, well, I'm going to do another one. And then I thought, you know, well, if I do 3, now I'm really making comics, you know? So then I made a 3rd one. And then there was a period of time where I rested on my laurels with those 3 issues. And it wasn't until number 4 that I really felt like, okay, I'm committed to this thing now. If I stop at 4, what's the difference between stopping at 4 and stopping at 1 at this point? Like I'm not just telling stories in the book, but I'm now conveying this message, this identity of self-publisher, small press, and I'm committed to this. So, yeah, I would just say, don't be discouraged by quality at the beginning, because that quantity is going to prove dedication sometimes more than anything else. Sometimes that dedication is more important than talent. So, at least that's what I've been telling myself.
Yeah, but I mean, and you make a good point too. And I mean, you see it at the shows that you've been to. I see it at the shows I've been to. You know, it does take that dedication and perseverance to get things done, because, you know, you get one book out there, and it is a good feeling. I've gotten a couple of one books out there with a buddy of mine, and then it's like, but now where do you go? Like, you know, you want to keep that momentum going. And, you know, if this isn't, it's hard for this to be your everyday job. Like a lot of folks that do this is like the side hustle for the most part. You know? So you said,
I've seen a lot of number 1s, and I've seen a lot of like number 0/ash cans in Artist Alley. And that's all they have on the table. And to me, that's like booking yourself for a concert and you have one song, or you have the chorus of a song, and you think that's enough to book a whole show. But you know, when I see fellow creatives or folks that I really admire that are just, you know, keep cranking out stuff, even if it's not necessarily anything I would have read otherwise, I still dig into that bibliography, because you see their growth as an artist. There's something to learn there. And you know, you just kind of glean that passion off of it. It becomes infectious. So
it's work, you know. And like you said, you're seeing the process for them, you know. Like there's an artist that's a friend of ours out here in New York. His name's Emilio Velez Jr. And he puts out, like, he does this book called The Dodgeball Teens, and it's a great book. And Emilio, he is like one of the best sales guys I know.
Sure.
You know? And at every show, he's got a new book on the table.
Awesome.
You know? And you know, and this is his thing, and he believes in that. He's got an audience, and it's great. And I mean, he does prints, he does character. I don't want to say, or I don't say caricatures, but he'll draw you as a dodgeballer. He's got buttons. He's got all this great stuff. And once you get past that ash can, then that's when you can start doing all these other things, because that's great. You can have like issue 1 plus some T-shirts, some stickers, balloons or whatever. But
sure.
like, why am I buying a T-shirt for one book?
Right.
Like, okay, I want more. And for like yourself, a lot of independent, people, they have a story to tell. And I don't know if he's still watching or not, but Ray Felix, who was talking about the toys before, him and his buddy Tom Siaka, who worked at Marvel, they're doing a whole Trump book series, and he's got his own. He's got his own universe out there too, and we're gonna have him come back on and talk about it. But again, every show it's something new, because if as a small press person, if you want to even kind of like, and it's impossible to compete with the main companies, but if you want yourself to be taken seriously, and like you said, have your musical set, you need to have like a library of things that people are going to want to look at your table, because they come to the convention and they'll be like, oh, I saw the last one. Okay.
Right.
What are you selling?
Yeah, the ash can's cool, because that would be like your demo tape, when you're walking down the promenade or whatever, and somebody's trying to force their cassette or CD. Does that still happen? People try to force that stuff into your hand. Hey, this is my demo. This is my demo. That's kind of what the ash can is. Yeah, it's that punk rock feeling of I'm starting something, and I want you to be on the ground floor of this. I need fans, and so that has a really cool vibe in and of itself. But I always think of going to Comic-Con like like this is my little stage at the comic equivalent of a Lollapalooza or something like that, and I have to have a distinguished voice and identity to stand out, even more so than my creative output. I generally have to be approachable and likable, so. I was just talking about that with a buddy of mine. He was talking about, I was listening to Rob Liefeld's Robservations podcast, and I made the bold statement that whether or not you like Rob Liefeld's art, his personality, everything about him is a seminal point in comics where it takes a turn towards celebrity. And you can go back and look at Jack Kirby's style as something seminal where comics took a turn and so on. And my buddy was sharing, where you have a lot of artists out there, your P. Craig Russells and he started naming some names. I'm like, yeah, but that's not, those artists don't have, they've created characters and they draw characters very well, but are they characters themselves? Like, when you watch Todd McFarlane's documentary or anything Stan Lee did, not just the cameos, but like all of his multimedia appearances over the course of his life, there are really only a handful of comic book personalities, and it's important to be that way at a con if you want to be memorable and likable. I mean, not obnoxious, but
But I mean, that's what, being memorable at a con. Like, and again, you go to like the Phoenix Con that you go to here, New York Comic Con, even San Diego. Like, what makes you stand out in Artist Alley amongst all the other artists? Because, and especially if you're a small indie guy, well, you might be sitting next to a guy who's had a good run on Spider-Man or a good run on and stuff. So, how do you hold your own next to that person? What do you have on your table that's doing that? Because I mean, listen, everybody has their variation of Harley Quinn in a sexy pose, but and that's a great way to get people to your table. But once you have them to your table, what are you going to hook them on?
Right. Everybody's going to sing along to "Don't Stop Believing." If you've nailed that riff, everybody's going to listen for that. But how many other tracks on that album can a casual non-Journey fan claim to know? And that's kind of what it's like with comics. A great action scene or a cool character design to me is the equivalent of a cool lick or riff. But when you dig into the story, then now you're into the whole discography. Like you found my hidden track. So
going back to the Monkees, everybody, they have their popular songs, but then, like you said, there's a whole library of songs.
Oh yeah, everybody knows "I'm a Believer," but nobody knows, PO Box 9847 or something like that. So.
Exactly. So no, but that's it's a nice comparison, music and art, because it's really true, and you want people to discover all that stuff. You want people to look forward to coming to the Comic-Con to find your work, and I think, as you were saying before, like you sit and you do your 24 hours in the window. Like I'm sure that definitely directs people towards you, and when you announce you're doing something like this, people will come and just watch you for a bit just because they want to see what it is. And then there's also that personal connection. They can be like, oh wow, I watched him draw this in that storefront.
Sure.
Here's the book, and I remember seeing him do that layout, and now I'm opening a copy of that book, which is great.
Absolutely, yeah. It's almost like being privy to a studio session at that point.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, I've certainly had folks walk by my table at a show and say, "This is the guy I saw in the window," and those maybe folks just going to Drawn to Comics for the day and they don't know something's going on, but there's a guy in the window. This is the guy I saw drawn in the window. What? And something I invested just 24 fleeting hours, and all of a sudden becomes a conversation 6 months later that leads to somebody picking up a couple books, and you just never know. So putting yourself out there as much as you're putting your work out there could really pay off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're coming close to the end of our show here tonight, but just like that one thing is, like, you have this idea as an artist, and like you said, you spent 24 hours, you've invested in creating this world, these characters. Like the one of my favorite Star Trek shows was Deep Space Nine.
Sure.
And there's that one episode, Far Beyond the Stars, where it takes place when Sisko's Benny Russell, the writer, and he's writing Deep Space Nine for the science fiction magazine. But like there really are parallels, because when you create these characters in your head, like for all the things that you do too, like you've created a world. Now you've invested in it, and you want to see that continue to flesh out. Like you said, cool. We did and you said you did the 3 books, and then after 4, you realized, I'm going to keep going. Like after you do the first one, and you just stopped, and it was like, what was the point?
Yeah, like that was if I made one comic book, I would consider that more like I made a craft. Like like arts and crafts. Like I can make one origami bird. But that doesn't mean I'm, Mr. Origami for the rest of my life or anything. You invest in a series of comics, and in any capacity too. I'm not saying issues, but short stories, strips, anything that can be defined as comics. And that's a pretty loose definition. As long as there is a continuity, at least in your commitment, then you're pulling it off. So.
Yeah, and again, because I'm guilty. I am guilty of this myself. Creating a whole world and then like getting ready for a second one, and it's been like 8 years and there hasn't been a second one yet. Well,
it absolutely happened.
Guilty here. But again, and Joe Ryan, thank you. Joe says, I'll just show it. Joe said there's some valid points there. Someone who's working on his first creator-owned, trying to make it perfect, it's about helps, and that's the thing is like it comes down to the commitment. 100%. Right.
I would say, do you want one perfect issue that took you years, or do you want 12 issues? You know what I mean? Which would you be more proud of? And yeah, every flaw in each of those 12 issues. Believe me, every flaw. And some folks might introduce you to new ones along the way. But 12 issues on a table. And let's say it took you 5 years to make 12 issues. Is way more impactful to somebody walking by than that single issue sitting there for 5 years. Just the one first issue that you made. Could be perfect. Could be, the X-Men #1 reincarnate or whatever the perfect comic book is. What's that do you if it took you that long and then that's all you got?
Yeah, no, absolutely solid advice. So Joe, take that, and everybody else who's watching that, take that. That's really solid advice. But yeah, no, I mean it's 9:30 and time flies when you're having fun, as it always does. Joe says such great insight. So Joe, we're glad you were able to take away from that as well.
Thanks, Joe.
So
very cool.
But yeah, so before we take off, I just want everybody to know, if you see here on the bottom, perfect, it says check out Russ at AmazingArizonaComics.com, and they can order all your books there as well.
Yep, there's a link to the shop, which is connected through another friend's website here. So when you click shop, it'll redirect you to where all the issues are posted. Follow me on Instagram too to see what's going on at Amazing AZ Comics. That's where I post the process stuff, a lot of toy pics, and random musings like everybody else does. This weekend, issue 44 will be brand new and up for digital download, so folks can check that out again with Karen and the Beer Bugs. And actually, there are two other characters whose names are simply the Blue Shift and the Red Mirage. If you follow politics, those terms are familiar to you, so I satirized those in there. Sounded like perfect, like golden age comic book names. The Red Mirage, the Blue Shift. So I had to use those.
Online, so you have them available digital, or can you get floppies from you online?
Both. Yeah,
both.
They're both available. You can order a print copy that I'll be happy to sign and mail to you, or you can just download a PDF and read it on your phone at work. Yeah,
so no, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, you know, support independent comics. I think that's really an important thing to do. And I mean, like, support what's going on in Arizona. I think, you know, that's why I had you on here tonight, because, you know, we wanted to see, like, we hit New York all the time, and let's hit other parts of the country as well. So there's so many.
I didn't get to dispel any Arizona myths. You know, like how many guns are in my gun safe right now? You know.
So, again, Russ, thank you so much for tonight. It was great having you here tonight, and reconnecting as well.
Absolutely.
And just so everybody knows, next week we're going to be back here, and we're going to be talking to this gentleman. His name is Carlos Fernandez Puertolas, and he created this short film called Frank and Emmett, which they just wrapped filming on, and it's really inspired by the work of Jim Henson and the Muppets, and it's about a puppeteer who has a connection with his character Emmett. So, and he has like a mind of his own. It's a nice little story that they just put out. So that'll be next week. And again, check out Russ at AmazingArizonaComics.com. And again, I'll put it back up here. Amazing AZ Comics on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter too.
Not really, just Instagram.
No, okay, just Instagram. All right, cool. Yeah. And then for everybody in the New York area, come and check out our outdoor IncrediCon this weekend, Saturday from 10 to 4 at the Wappingers Town Hall. So we will see you all again soon. Thank you again, Russ.
Thank you so much, Mike. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Excellent.